Hi guys, it's the Sluicers here, and today I'm going to be showing you what are, in my opinion, the 5 most irritating things that happen to you when you're gold prospecting. These are just personal opinion, and I would love to hear what you guys think down below on what your most irritating things are while you're gold mining. So, let's get into it. So I'll start off with an honourable mention, which is when you get a really good target on the metal detector, and it just turns out to be junk. Now, this mostly irritated me. It's only an honourable mention, as this mostly just irritated me when I was new. I've gotten to deal with it. Like, for example, you're way up in the back country, up in a gully renowned in a gold bearing area for big gold. You're swinging over the bedrock, and then in this big crevice, suddenly, bam, your detector just makes a nice, not too good to be true, a nice signal going all the way to the gold. Crevice it out, it's right at the bottom of the crevice, getting deeper, really promising, pull it out, and oh, it's just an old piece of steel or piece of lead, something like that. It is really irritating, especially when you spend all the time digging it, but you do get to deal with it eventually as you detect more and more. Mostly an irritating thing when you're not used to, like, when you expect something out of it. Once you get to the point, you eventually get to the point to deal with it and never expect anything from any target. Alright, now on to the top 5. So at number 5, this one's arguable, but my dad thinks it's really annoying personally, is when your gumboots / waders fill up with water. Once they're full of water, you just it's painful for the first little bit, but you kind of just get to deal with it. But it's really, really irritating when you have to let your gumboots fill up to get to the spot, or there's a leak in your gumboots or waders and they fill up with water, and it can just make the prospecting a lot more uncomfortable and less laxy, and a lot, just not as nice. It is just really irritating. You're like, and I just got water on my gumboot. That's my gumboot out for the day, and it just makes it a bit more miserable. It's just really irritating when it happens. Okay, coming in at number 4, we have when you find a good gold bearing spot, but there is either A, not enough flow to set up the sluice, or B, nowhere to set up the sluice. This is, for example, you're test panning in a spot, but it's next to a really deep, low flow part of the creek. Not rapidy, not rocky, not even an angle. Just like a deep part of the Great Creek where the water's about a metre deep. And you're getting really good test pans, but you have to walk 20, 30 metres, if not more, in either direction to actually get to a spot where you can set up your sluice. This is so irritating, and you're like, oh, this spot could be so good, but we're going to need to move the buckets all this way to process them. It's just really annoying when you're like, oh, there's a test pan, oh, there's a couple flakes in that. Oh, wait, we have to set up the sluice down there. This isn't too big of a deal, but it has happened to us quite a bit, mostly at Goldsboro and Slab Hut public areas. Those are the two that are probably the most irritating for us, because they kind of go rapidy still. And if you get caught out on one of the still deeper bits, it can be quite irritating, and you have to spend ages making a dam, or it's not possible, and you just have to move upstream or downstream. So that is pretty irritating. So now we're on to the top 3. Now, these other 3, they're annoying, but they're not really... I forgot to mention sandflies. That's only really a problem on the coast, though, so I'll just leave that out. But, the top 3, the other 3 are annoying things. These 3 things, if they happen, they just irritate you so much, and me at least. Okay, so number 3, we have when you return to your spot and someone else is digging there. This isn't, it's hard because it's not really their fault. But yeah, when you return to your spot and someone else is there. So for example, you're at, let's say, Slab Hut fossicking areas. It's probably the most popular. You're digging in your hole, getting good gold. You come back after you go for your lunch break. You come back, and there's another prospector digging out in your hole, shoveling it through the sluice. Now this is happened to us twice. Once we came back to our hole. We just went for lunch and we came back to the hole, and there was someone else. They were just setting up there, and they had done a few pans. And I wasn't going to say, I was like, I don't know if I should say anything. My dad then just got real angry, went in and was like, you do realise that's our hole you're digging? And then the guy was real good about it, and he pretty much just let us keep digging there. But it was kind of irritating, / kind of cringy. And the other thing was the other location. We didn't actually know who this was. It was overnight, so we were at a fossicking area, and we found it it was quite a good hole. We're getting quite a lot of gold out of it actually. We dug a hole. We got it probably about half down to bedrock, about half done in the hole, I reckon overall. And we had to head out for the evening a bit early, at about 3 o'clock that day, because we had to head into the local town to get some supplies. And so we headed off, came back, slept, got up the next morning, 7 o'clock, come back to our hole, and then someone else had been in there overnight or late in the afternoon and just dug almost the entire thing out. It was just completely destroyed. And worst of all, I'm not sure if they did this intentionally, after they had dug it out, there were quite a few large rocks left in the hole. Whether they had stumbled in or they put them in, I don't know. It is a rule to fill in your holes, but it just, I was very, 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 very angry. It would have had to have been one of my most irritating moments in mining. Just picked up a rock, threw it at the bank. It was very annoying. But yeah, that's number 3, when you return to your spot and someone else is digging there. So coming in at number 2, this might not annoy all people, but when the gold gets worse as you dig deeper / outwards. So I mean, like, the gold's super concentrated. This hasn't affected us too badly. There are once again 2 occasions where this is. So an example is that I'll use our Moonlight Creek as for an example. So our first trip to Moonlight Creek, we're at Moonlight Creek, we went into the area, prospected for ages. We're about to give up. We come back. I do a test pan, and whoo, 4 solid flakes, like solid flakes. A very good test pan just on the surface. I was like hyped. I was like, great. Imagine if it continues this the whole way. Imagine how much it will be on bedrock. And then so we begin digging. 5 buckets for the sluice, cleaning out, and what? Probably only the equivalent of 3 or 4 of those pans. Almost nothing. I do some test pans on the surface around the hole, and almost nothing. I do a test pan in the hole, one teeny bit, and it turns out there was just for some reason, a concentration of flood gold on the surface, and it was just so irritating because I really thought I was onto something, but no, it just turns out there was nothing. Another example is there was this creek. The first time we went there, we had a little spot on inside bend. It wasn't even an obvious spot. It wasn't a massive bend in front of a rock. Just a small and slight inside bend, bit of gravel there. Small inside bend, a little bit of gravel there. Did a test pan. Oh yeah, 5 or 6 flakes, like really good. Keep digging, just got better. Hit the bedrock, real insane. We came out with our second or third best trip so far. Probably about 4 or 5 grams for the weekend. Which was really good. We then went back to that creek, tried all up and down, and just nowhere else was as good. We found a spot maybe half as good, but nowhere else was as good as that spot when it was legit. We hopped in the creek. It was about the second or third spot we test panned, and from there we've spent hours prospecting up and down the river, not to find a spot that good. So it's really, really irritating when you think you're onto a great hole or a great creek, and then the gold is just really concentrated in one of the areas you try, and kind of puts you on, almost like a Duffer's Creek, puts you on, thinks it's really good, and then you just get disappointed as you find out all your hopes were wrong and there's not much gold there. Okay, we're finally on to the number one thing when you're gold mining. Number one most annoying thing when you're gold mining, which is when you arrive at the spot and the river's in flood. Now, this is the most annoying thing, because when it happens, you can't gold mine. When you can't gold mine, everything is miserable. There's no point in living anymore if you can't gold mine. Like, that's just it. And so you arrive at the spot, and this has happened. This has only really shut down one of our trips. It's happened twice. So this has happened to us twice now. We now know to check the forecast beforehand. So it was really good weather scheduled for the coast that weekend. We headed into what was it? That's right. We headed into Lyle Creek, Fossicking area. Actually, we arrived there, and the river's just roaring. Not roaring, but the river is really high. There's no banks you can get to, dry banks, and even just stepping into what's normally a gravel bank, it was up to your gumboots, and you just could not prospect. yeah, you just could not prospect. And it went down the next morning we got there. Yeah, in the night, so we couldn't mine that night. Next morning we woke up, only went down a teeny bit, and it ended up almost completely ruining our prospecting trip there. So irritating. It was just a waste of a weekend almost. We ended up going elsewhere and getting a little bit of gold, but half our mining time down the drain. And this has also happened one other time. It wasn't too much of an extent, which was at Goldsboro Foskling area. Um, we arrived there in the evening, and the river was just roaring flood. Um, Nowhere to pan, and we had to just dump that evening. But the next morning, the river went down a little bit, so we can maybe squeeze in the air. But then we went up the walk and up the side gully that the Foskling area is on, and the side gully wasn't affected so bad, so we could still mine, and the water was not much higher than normal. But no, when you arrive at the spot and the river's in flood, it's just devastating. Or when it starts bucketing down and the river comes up and you have to dump while you're mining. That is also one of the most annoying things in like the history of everything. It's just horrendous. But yeah, that concludes the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to see more gold prospecting videos, make sure to smash down that subscribe button and leave a like. And I hope to see you on the next trip.